Welcome to the third episode of the Tessa Talks 2 podcast in the fourth series, where I've been talking to busy city workers about what music means to them. Today I'm here at DLA Piper in the offices in London, talking with Simon Levine, the global co-CEO of DLA Piper. We've been having piano lessons every Monday morning and discovering what music means to him. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Simon this morning. Well, thank you, Simon, for being my guest this morning.
It's a pleasure.
I'm really interested in hearing what music means to you, and also how you create a balance around your life. I think I've been really struck by the space that you've been able to create in amongst what is obviously a hugely demanding role as CEO of a global law firm.
Okay, all right. Well, they're good questions. I like the fact that I've created some space because I'm not sure I have, but I'll give it a go. So music, I think I've always loved music. I've never engaged with music in that. I've never played anything, but I've listened to lots and lots of music. I've gone to, concerts or bands or rock concerts or whatever, and I obviously worked a lot in the music industry. And for me, actually, it's really escapism. Even when I'm coming in the morning on the train and I'm walking to the office, if I'm playing some music, I'm sort of forgetting about what I've got to do during the day. It's just my own little world I can be in. Got to make sure I'm not run over by any cars while I'm listening to it. So it's really escapism, actually, and sort of quite joy. I just think it makes you feel really good.
Yeah, great. Well, that's hopefully it's a big part of what music can do. And what are you listening to as you're walking down the paper? What's your sort of morning track?
It could be anything. So there's certain bands I sort of grew up with and liked and still like, but because I've now got kids that have grown up, my kids are 23, 20 and 17, you end up listening to lots of stuff they listen to. And then really stupid things like when I'm watching stuff on TV, there's a song, quite a well-known song by a band called Smash Mouth, and it was on a TV program the other day, so I quickly Shazammed it to work out. I thought, I really like that. What is it? And then I stick that on my Spotify and I listen to that. So it's really, really random. It tends to be lots of different songs, not any one thing in particular. And to your other question about creating space, music helps you do that. That escapism helps you put some space around your life. And I think that's probably something I've learned a little bit later in life than I probably should have if you ask my family. Anyway.
But that's important, isn't it? And that's in a way what I think a lot of people are trying to grapple for is more time, more space. Time is such a valuable commodity. There's such a value to it.
I know. I think there is. And I think more than ever, I was talking to someone about it the other day. I sometimes lecture on or give talks on professions around the world and different things. And I explained to people, 30 years ago, I sort of made this really naff joke about the only mice in my office were the ones running around the floor. But you didn't have computers and keyboards and mice. And, when people communicated with you in the legal world or in any professional services world, if they wanted an urgent response, they meant within 7 days, not within 7 minutes. So
Everything's so much more instant.
It absolutely is. And so as technology has changed, and become more applicable in the workplace, then the pressures on people have changed.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side is I used to have to come into the office every weekend to work, and you don't have to come into the office to work a lot of the time now. You can sit at home. The downside is you're working at home when you should be giving yourself some space. So I think music, playing an instrument, doing some other type of hobby is really important for your sanity.
Counterbalance, isn't it? That does create that counterbalance which you need if you're sort of extolling so much energy into immediacy, then creating that space and creativity as well through music playing. And here at DLA Piper, you've just launched music lessons, which is such a great initiative that you've given to employees to allow them to have that time. And I think the fact that you're endorsing that by yourself, prioritising an hour a week is such an inspiration and really something which...
Well, that's sort of kind. You can say nice things to me all day. Look, I mean, the truth is we are doing that here in London. We're actually doing it in some other places. There's a studio we set up in Paris, for example, where we're doing it. And I've got some great photos of them with the drum kit and the guitars and stuff. Look, I think the most important thing is health and well-being. Okay, whenever we do staff engagement surveys, we talk about the values at the firm, underpinning it being collaborative, being supportive. Underpinning all of that is giving people space and time that you talked about, and that health and well-being. And I think we just thought giving people the opportunity to learn a musical instrument, or in some cases just get better at a musical instrument, gives them a bit of time out of the day. And I think people are always surprised when I tell them we're doing this, because they say, well, what, you're allowing people during the course of the day. You must make them do it at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And of course, that's not true. I don't care when they do it.
That would defeat the point, really.
It
as
would
well.
totally defeat the point. Yeah. I want people during the day to take some time out, come in here, play on an instrument, take even 20 minutes just playing a tune on a piano, forgetting about all the pressures they've got, and then they can reset themselves.
Yeah, all come together in your choir, because you've got a huge... Charles Severs organises your annual Battle of the Bands.
Yeah.
And that is also, I think, something which is aspirational for other firms, to bring together globally all the different offices to sing together, to be one
huge.
firm.
I mean, it's amazing. So lawyers have many good qualities, as well as not always great qualities. But one of the qualities lawyers have, if you can call it quality, is their competitiveness. And when we first did the Battle of the Bands, it was about 4 years ago, the first time we did it, we thought it'd be a bit of a laugh. We were raising money for UNICEF, which is our global charity.
Okay.
And people just got really, really competitive. So the last time we did it, people had all the outfits on, sparkly jackets, they're doing little routines. It was bizarrely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we've got the
egos coming out, but totally
absolutely, all a bunch of lovers. They were all going for it. It's great. So we've got the next one at the end of March, so coming up in a few weeks' time. We've got more of the offices around the world than ever competing. Yeah. The London Choir has been practising, as far as I can work out, they're now practising about 3 times a week.
Yeah, there's a big group of them. And it's going to be local to here, isn't it?
It's going to be local to here, yeah. I'm going to be there. Last time, in the interval, if you like, while the voting was being sorted out, my CFO, Paul Edwards, and one of my MDs on my executive, Sandra Wallace, sung Angels. Neither of them sing. I actually think they did a really good job.
It's pretty brave, isn't
and
it?
then I was bet that if I would go on stage dressed as an angel with pink wings and do a dance, people would raise money. And for that interval bit, we raised £10,000 for UNICEF. So that's
amazing.
Yeah, I don't mind dressing up with pink wings. I thought it suited me. So
and this year, you're hopefully going to be playing the piano. So you've started lessons.
This year, I've sort of said to my chief of staff, Andy Williams, named obviously after the singer, he said his mum and dad must have had a sense of humour, or Big Andy, as I affectionately call him, because he's quite a big guy and used to play rugby and was in the military.
Oh, wow.
He plays the banjo, and one of the guys, Aaron, who is in the IT, one of our IT services, plays the guitar. So they are going to do a dueling banjos thing from a scene from Deliverance, the very famous film. And somewhere along the line, I'm going to be involved in there playing the piano. I'm a bit worried about this.
We're working on it.
Yeah. We are working on it.
This will be your debut.
Yeah, well, I'm relying on you to work out what I've got to do.
I've had it arranged.
Have you?
Yes, it's all written out.
I hope it's in very simple tunes.
So we'll bring that to your lesson on Monday, I think.
Yeah, good.
And how have you found learning the piano? Because it's such a contrast between what you're doing prior to your lessons, sometimes giving global addresses, to the minutiae of rewiring your brain to sort of link your fingers up with your brain. There's a lot of detail involved in just the beginning of learning the piano.
That is the hard bit. So the first thing was I had not learnt to read music since I was at junior school. I'm 54 now, so you can work out that's quite a long time ago, yeah. So the first problem was just getting my brain to read music. Still is a problem, as you know, sometimes, but it's just trying to recognise it quickly.
It's learning a language.
And it's learning
it is.
A whole new language. Totally is. And then the other issue is just translating it for someone that probably stupidly and slightly too proudly thought that my brain was really quick and I can do things very quickly. There are times when I'm almost just frozen between my brain and my fingers when I'm going, it's that finger. And
it's a different really part of your brain, isn't it? And the fingers as well, like we talked about, it's sort of similar to yoga. It's amazing how yoga teachers can differentiate between their toes, but for them that's normal.
That's another problem I have when I do my yoga.
Your Sunday evenings. Well, that's a great way of creating
space.
Well,
yoga is another one. We actually do things, yoga lessons and Pilates and things here too. Yeah. And I'm a big believer in all of that and mindfulness and everything else. So I'm a big believer in all of that psychology. But so I've loved it. It's been a real challenge. I'm fortunate that we have a piano at home. My wife has played the piano forever. Well, maybe not forever, but certainly since she was a little girl. And so I at least have a piano to practice on. As you know.
And a duet partner when you're practicing your duets.
Yeah, but I have to say, she's probably going to watch this, so I'm in trouble. But I'd rather play the duet with you because you are far less tough on me than she is. She sits and she goes, "What note is it, Simon? What note is it?" And all of a sudden, I'm feeling I'm 5. And
Oh no, well that's the same with me and my husband. I tried to teach him piano lessons before we were married. I think if I'd carried on, we wouldn't have got to that point. It's quickly stopped. But it's interesting, isn't it, that dynamic for Jane? It's probably something which she clearly is better than you at, which is
significantly better.
It's sort of a
the
balancing
music she plays.
relationship.
There's a lot of notes on that page.
Which is quite. It's a space where she can teach you something.
Yeah, no, it's quite fun. I mean, my kids, when they are in the house, they're not always in the house, but I think I find it quite amusing that their dad at this age is doing it. My 20-year-old daughter Sasha said to me the other day, when I was practicing When the Saints, I think it's one of the bits we've been doing when the Saints go marching in, and she came and said, "Dad, for goodness sake, I feel like I'm listening to my 5-year-old practicing for a school lesson." And I went, well, it's similar.
Brilliant to almost regress to that and learn how to learn again, isn't it? Because there's something.
And the sense of achievement you get. So I know I've not done anything too complicated, but I'm now at a point, I've only been doing it for a few weeks, and I'm now at the point, where I can play both hands, different notes in both hands.
Yeah.
And a sense of achievement that you get when you can do that, or when you play something that actually sounds like a tune.
You recognise the tune.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, well, you are doing really well, and I think it's really impressive that you found time to practice. Even when you were travelling in Australia last week, you had the portable keyboard, and
I did.
That's a sign of dedication.
That's my guilty secret. So I bought myself this travel piano, this travel keyboard, and it rolls up. It's silicon, and it rolls up. You lent me one, and then I bought.
Upgraded it.
And and it's actually great though, because you can plug it in. In fact, it was quite funny because I went to Australia with Andy Williams, my chief of staff, and he has a sort of a portable banjo. I don't know what it looks like. You sort of take it apart and put it back together again. Okay. So my wife was saying to me, "Can I just check, are you actually two going on a work trip, or is this some sort of on-tour gig you're doing with your portable piano and your banjo?" But
that might be the future.
It could be.
DLA Piper on tour.
It may have to be, yeah.
You worked with bands in your past life, didn't you? Which...
lots of different bands. Some record companies. When I started out, I was mainly doing music work, and that got me into TV and film and sport and stuff. So when I started out, some of the record companies, but in terms of bands, I worked for the Beatles for 8 years.
Did you get to know them?
So 3 of them. Obviously, John Lennon wasn't alive. The one I got to know best was George Harrison, who was just lovely.
Yeah.
I used to go and visit him, and I went on a trip to Guernsey with him and did different stuff with him.
Pretty rock and roll.
Pretty rock and roll. Who else? Let's see. Elton John.
Elton John, wow.
Bob Geldof. There was Sting. I used to occasionally go backstage at concerts. So, if we were working on concerts. So the Nelson Mandela concert on stage with Simple Minds was quite good. That was quite loud, actually. But anyway, it was good. I'm sure people were wondering what the hell I was doing on stage, but that's by that stage.
In the wings on stage, or actually?
Yeah, but I was
not
sort of
just
just
shaking
the wings. Yeah, no, I wasn't. They weren't that stupid. Who else?
Are you still in touch with them? Do you? Because they might be quite impressed.
No, I haven't. You know what? I haven't. You lose touch with all these people eventually. I think my proudest moment is in the 70s and early 80s. There was a singer called Leo Sayer, and Leo Sayer had, I can't say, he was popular at the time. He had different views. He was a lovely guy, and I helped him. A lot of those artists were stuck in recording contracts. It's the same problem George Michael had. And the way the contracts were constructed. Anyway, I did a case. They were restricted. So what essentially, not to bore people with it, but you had to deliver 3 albums. But if the record company never approved any of the albums, you were sort of stuck in this perpetual, I can't release my album, but no one will allow me to leave either. And we did a case for him and got him off. And he re-released a very famous record he did. And one of the tabloids had a headline just after it was releasing, "Who allowed this man back in the music charts?" I thought that'd be me. But I should say, for the record, he was lovely, very talented guy, and he was a really lovely guy and did well for a while. I think he's in Australia now.
So, out of all those bands that you've worked with, and there's quite a few, which band would you choose to play the soundtrack of your life?
That's a good question. I guess I'm going to choose this just by virtue of favourite person I met or dealt with, and that would be George Harrison personally. He was just a lovely guy. He was super talented. He was really nice to someone who was a relatively junior lawyer. I actually think sometimes was the most underestimated of the Beatles. People talk about Paul and John a lot, understandably or whatever, but I think George Harrison was great. So yeah, he could have, if he was still alive today, sadly he's not, he could play the soundtrack to my life.
It's a pretty cool guy to play your soundtrack. What did you learn? What do you remember looking back, learning the most out of that bubble, if it was a bubble of time with those types of incredible musicians?
The thing I learned from that time, and actually this is true of my time working with the Hollywood studios as well, because for a period I also did a lot of work in LA, with all the studios,
I didn't know.
and on different films and various things.
Were you living in LA?
No, I was just spending a lot of time. So we were the team I was in. We did a lot of work on a lot of all the Harry Potter films, and you occasionally get invited to premieres and all sorts of stuff. It was quite fun. So you
Red
often
carpet.
got on Phil's set. Yeah, red carpet. Yeah, no.
I stayed in the hostel. I worked in the hostel opposite the red carpet as a chambermaid.
I did.
Anyway,
No,
yeah.
I've done the red carpet thing and everything else, and different premieres. But the thing you learn about anything, I think, in the media industry, which my kids are sort of sick of me telling them about, is that it's sort of false. It's not all genuine. So that, I know it doesn't sound an uplifting statement, but let me explain why it is. I don't mean it in a negative way. It's helped me in life understand that when people say this is all great or fabulous or whatever, you have to stay grounded. You have to take it with a pinch of salt. And when you're working in those industries, you see the people who are incredibly talented and grounded, and you see the people who are incredibly talented and lose their grounding. And it's a real life lesson between the people who have survived in those businesses for decades and the ones that don't. And the ones that survive tend to be the ones that stay a bit more grounded and realistic about
And
what they're doing, and connected to the people, to the world, and everything else. And
it's such a transient industry, and people do come and go in a very flippant
I know,
way,
they do, and you start to believe you're more important than you are. I think was it the other week? I think it was Ricky Gervais at one of the award ceremonies said, "Whoever's going to come up here and get an award, save us the 5-minute speech about how you think we should save the world. You're just a bunch of actors, okay?" So, and there's a degree of that, and I really admire the people that stay grounding through all of that. And I've never had that level of fame or anything, but I do think it's important to stay grounded.
Yeah, it is important. But at the same time, I suppose the platform that level of fame gives you, especially now with social media, does give you a fairly individual power to
it does.
Not change the world necessarily, but raise millions of pounds.
And so raising awareness and raising pounds, I think, is a great thing to do, as opposed to lecturing people as to what they should be doing with their life. But no, I think it gives you a huge power. Social media has changed everything. I mean, from when I was originally acting in the media industry to today, social media has changed the whole thing completely.
Yeah, totally turned it on its head.
Yeah.
And for an aspiring CEO, what would your life lesson or words of wisdom? I mean, you've pretty much, I think, said what you might suggest. What would your advice be for an aspiring CEO?
So, I think the two big things you need to learn is, if you aspire to get to leadership positions, at least one of them will make most of my colleagues fall around the floor laughing. But one is listening. Okay, you've got to be a really good listener. And so many people don't do listening well, and lawyers in particular are desperate to tell you how clever they are, and they've got the answer. Me too. So you have to learn to listen.
Yeah.
And that's really important. It builds a human connection with people, and it helps people follow you and listen to you and trust you. And you've got to, and when you promise something, you have to deliver on that promise.
Yeah.
So that's sort of in one bucket of listening and fulfilling promises. The other is patience. That's the bit that will have everyone falling around the floor laughing, because I'm incredibly impatient. How many times have you said to me, Tessa, count, you don't have to play the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, yeah, no.
Measured.
And I'm not measured. And everything I do, I'm impatient about, but trying to learn some patience. And one of my favourite sayings that's come to mind anyway is, so when I grew up, I was massively into sport. I liked playing sport. I loved watching sport. One of my really early childhood idols was Muhammad Ali, and he had lots and lots of sayings. But one of his sayings was, "Don't count the days, make the days count." And I just think that's such a lovely phrase, because time whizzes by. I've been doing this job for 6 years. I couldn't tell you where this 6 years as CEO has gone. And you don't want to wish it away. You just,
really
but
do want to
really
live in
make
the
it
moment.
count. Yeah, live in the moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So learning the piano, learning anything new, you have to really embrace mistakes, don't you? So what's your experience of that and transcending that to sort of failure on a bigger business?
Well, no, I think I get what I do. I know where you're going with that. I mean, look, I think the first thing is that, well, the first thing to say is that failure is a big part of my piano playing, but that's just my
That
lack
might be
of
the
talent.
only thing at the moment in your life that you are
I
able
think,
to embrace
yeah, I
failure.
think it's actually quite a good. Firstly, I think it's quite a good grounding experience. You're marching around offices around the world and thinking you know what you're doing, and then you realise there's a talent that 5 and 6 year olds can do quite happily, and you're struggling with. A bit like when I first learned to ski, actually, because I didn't learn until I was much older in life. Watching my kids ski and watching me struggle, I'm a bit better at it now.
Yes, it's like learning anything later in life.
But
isn't
it's harder.
Yeah.
So you do have to embrace that. But equally, I don't really view it as a failing or failure. I view it as a challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm not sitting there thinking, I'm just going to give up on this or whatever. I'd much rather do it until I can get it right. And there's something actually quite, and I've got into this a bit more. Again, I know I've only been doing it a few weeks, but I've now got to the point where I realise if I sit in front of a piece of music, when we were doing You Got a Friend in Me, that was the other bit we've been doing, and I did half of it with you, and you said, well, just go away and do the other half and see how you get on.
Yeah.
And actually, there's something really nice about having half an hour on your own at piano, just playing each key slowly, trying to work out how that sheet music connects to what you're doing up with your hands and on the piano.
Yeah, quite
sort of a bit like solving it's a bit like solving a puzzle, my version of Sudoku or something. I don't know.
Exactly.
So I really, really enjoy it. So I don't really feel it's a failure. I just feel it's a challenge.
Yeah, failure. I mean, I view the word failure anyway in quite a positive light. Sort of fail better. And I think, especially through seeing everything through a musical lens, there are no wrong notes because you, especially in jazz, you just react.
No.
Against this, but if you're playing in a duo and you're improvising, then there are no wrong notes, and I think that is the way to really.
That was it Morecambe and Wise, whatever. I'm playing all the right notes, not necessarily in the right order.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that's something which, if you are experiencing music or singing in a choir or getting to participate in music making, then very quickly that is something which you can also transfer to your business style. Just to accept and allow. It's about allowing, isn't it?
Well, I think you can. I think the piano, learning the piano, making it clear to others that I'm learning the piano when asked what we're doing with music in offices and all that other stuff, has been beneficial on a number of levels. It's been really beneficial for me, but actually, and it helped. There's a lesson to be learned there in the way that you've explained, but also, I just think it's been really good for lots of other people. It sort of is quite permissive. It makes other people think it's okay to do other stuff in the offices or to have a go or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I like that idea. I like the idea that we break those stereotypes of law firms only having people in them that have to work however many hours a day and that's all they do. I think it's good to do something else.
Especially in the future of automation. PwC did that research recently, didn't they? That by 2029, in the law law industry,
law
sector,
robots.
And that social interaction is also, I think, the most important factor to having a longer life. So that social interaction and listening, which can be lost in the business world. Listening is so important to music, but also to humanity. And I think you can hear, but often people don't listen. And Beethoven who's 250 years ago, was born this year. Not this year, he was 250 years ago he was born. But he famously went deaf, but he could still always listen, even though he couldn't hear.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's lots of examples. And actually, you talked about the automation and technology and everything else. I sort of talk a bit with, I've got a good friend, Professor Richard Susskind, that's written lots of books about law and technology and the end of lawyers. Is it the end of lawyers? It's always at pains to tell me there's a question mark at the end of that. And the truth is, I don't think professional services, lawyers, accountants, people in banking, finance, whatever, I don't think technology is the end of all of those people and professions. I'm sorry for those people were hoping. But I do, it changes, it reframes it. And what's interesting, in fact, I was looking at something the other day for a speech I was giving. There was a great cartoon that was in one of the major newspapers during the Industrial Revolution, 100 years ago or so. And it was a picture of a giant mincing machine. And on the side of it, it said automation, because it was talking about mechanical automation, of looms, weaving, whatever. And it had workers being put in the top and coming out as mincemeat. Oh. The idea being that people would lose their jobs and never be able to work again because of machines. And 100 years on, that hasn't true. No. And I don't think it's any different today.
But the skill sets are going to be different.
But the skill sets will be different. And what's interesting for me is that if you look at something like music, that's been a constant.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed. It's gone all the way through. I'm not saying styles of music may have changed, but it's gone all the way through, and it's been a very constant in people's lives. It's been a constant in making people happy, or when they're sad, picking them up, or reflecting, or whatever.
Yeah.
So for all that technology stuff, it doesn't affect music, it seems to me.
Not at all. Music's going to be creating, like you say, the constant, but it'll create that space for people to have the humanity, which perhaps is an element that we lost with more robots. And about 18 months ago, you rebranded DLA Piper. And interestingly, without knowing that musical officers was going to be kind of coming into your culture, you did have a really musical visual identity to the brand. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. Yeah, we did.
So we are obviously called DLA Piper, and we have our brand, but we wanted a new visual, what we called a visual identity, something that stood out. And so I we worked with this great business that really helped us called Within International, and we worked with them for a while. And the guys that were doing that, we all sat around a table and said, well, what could we do that's different? And we started talking about the voice of the people, the voice of our clients, the voices of our staff. People have a voice. So it just reminded me of the King's speech. He kept saying, I have a voice. Yes, you do have a voice. But it was like that.
And equal voices.
And equal voices, absolutely.
It feels like a very levelling, allowing.
And that's how we want it to be. Everyone has a role to play, and they're really important. So they helped us design a visual identity, which was effectively through some very clever technology, taking a voice, like my voice, and splitting it out into voice strings, which were basically voice patterns, looking like a series of strings that we could then colour code or colour. Yeah. And, of course, you can take that to all sorts of places. So if you have a brochure on natural resources and energy, you could have your sector leader saying natural resources and energy, and that could be the voice pattern string. If you have something to do with clients or pitches, you could get them to say something and turn it into a voice string. It's just a nice visual identity. It looks very pleasing. It looks interesting.
It would make a really stunning sculpture, wouldn't it?
Well, so funny enough, one of the things that Will at that organisation at Within and I have discussed is whether we could have a sculpture of DLA Piper that we could turn into a 3D image that we could put maybe in the front of the London office here. And it would be quite cool if we could do that.
It would. Yeah. So that idea of ensemble mentality, I think that's really interesting, because taking the orchestra, for example, as a metaphor, where everybody has a role, but you have the front desks, the leaders of their sections, and then the different sort of leaders of different instruments being leaders of their sections. That global idea of DLA Piper is sort of similar to that. Each office presumably has its own personality, its own voice, but Absolutely. Coming together, you create this orchestral ensemble. Absolutely right.
And one of the things we are trying to do is use that visual identity and the voice patterns waves to create that idea that people have a level of individuality, but equally together as a team, they are stronger.
Yeah.
It's had a really good feedback. Internally people like it, clients like it. There's lots of things we could do with it, and of course it does totally link to singing. It links to music. It links to all those other sort of sound wave patterns that come out of music. It'd be really good.
The difference between the London sound and the Australia sound? What's the sort of timbre?
God, this is only a recipe for getting myself into trouble. But I'm not going to say which is more melodic, and I actually don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see what the big sing competition comes out with. I can't remember who won it last time. I think it might have been our Manchester office. I think it was Manchester, and they were incredible. But I have to say, I had no idea how many talented musicians and singing voices we had in this firm, and it is just lovely to see people, the joy that it brings out.
And the coming together. Yeah. strengthening of togetherness, which music does, I think.
Well, we have 4 key values, and one of them is be collaborative. And it really does play to that be collaborative part of our key values, actually. Yeah. And people do very much feel part of a team. And I think they just like the fact that as a firm as well, we want to encourage people to do that.
Yeah, and you're definitely doing that yourself by being such an example at the piano. So I'm looking forward to hearing people might like to come to a concert in the future. You might give a
I am, yeah, I know. You did say to me the other day, you said, so what are you trying to do with this? Do you want to do any exams? I said, well, yeah, I'm not sure I do really, but I definitely will attempt a concert at some point. I have a horrible feeling that given the times that in my professional life I've either been in court, I presented to hundreds of people in an audience and done films and talks, and I've lectured. I lecture sometimes at Imperial College Business School. I have a horrible feeling that I'm going to be about as nervous as I've ever been in my life. I don't get nervous about any of those things, but I suspect I'll be petrified when I have to do a concert.
Oh, I'll be supportive. But that's what's so interesting about it when we do have our end-of-term concerts and we have partners, lawyers, chief executives. Actually, we haven't ever had a CEO, so this would be a first. But people who are so comfortable in
could be a last as well. But anyway.
But that's exactly what happens, and it's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
Thing I think as well, but like you say, regressing to feeling like especially the first time you perform, it's sort of coming back to a time when that was a nerve-wracking thing to do at school, or what it always is.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Well, you are putting yourself out there. I mean, there's no doubt you're putting yourself out there.
But and the euphoria you'll feel.
Yeah, but I don't really mind. I mean, it's not. I have limited expectations, so in a way, the ability, but it's all part of being a challenge again. And you said the euphoria at the end of it. I think absolutely, it's a huge high at the end of it when you can achieve it.
Yeah, and there's a really supportive atmosphere, and I think people really appreciate that giving that actually music does do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. I've just got to keep playing tunes that I recognise.
Okay. I'll bring a Beatles medley.
Well, you'll have to, because if you don't do that, I never know if it's even sounding remotely right.
Yeah, no, that's true.
At least when you do, you got a friend in me. At least I know it's meant to sound like that from watching Toy Story.
Yeah. Well, should we have a listen?
I guess we could give it a go.
But thank you, Simon, for chatting to me today about music.
That's a pleasure. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for all the help and support you've given me and for encouraging me to do it. It's been brilliant.
That's fun. Thank you for listening. I was talking today with Simon Levine, the global co-CEO of DLA Piper. Tune in next month when I'll be chatting with Joel Garthwaite about how you can use music as a lens for business.